Well, we're going on to the semifinals now, and you take a look at some of these semifinal matchups, and some of them were a little bit further apart than what one would expect, while others were rather close, more of what you would expect for being at this level of the season. Taking a look at Class 1A, obviously we have our own Lena Winslow Panthers with a 52-20 win over the Akron Bulldogs as they advance to their third consecutive semifinal appearance. And they're going to be taking on Annawan-Wethersfield, who we had the pleasure of seeing just 2 weeks ago when they played Forreston in the second round, as they get past Morrison 20-13. In the South bracket, we have Athens and Central A+M playing out exactly as we had hoped it would, as those two teams were the two teams that we've been watching all season long as being the top teams in the state of Illinois in the South bracket for Class 1A. And here they are getting ready to go into the semifinal match that's going to be held in Athens. Central A+M was a 42-8 winner over Arcola, and Athens beat Carrollton by a score of 55-28. Rolling through Class 2A, Sterling Newman takes care of Knoxville 28-0 to get back into the semifinals, and they're going to face Fieldcrest, who beat Clifton Central 37-19. Fieldcrest is the team that took out our West Carroll Thunder in the first round 20-8. So Fieldcrest and Newman getting set for that semifinal matchup. And they're going to play the winner of Nashville and St. Teresa. Nashville beat Pana 41-19, and to me that was a rather large score discrepancy. I thought it would be a little bit closer game than it was, but Nashville getting it done, and St. Teresa took care of Auburn 34-6, as the Bulldogs are really looking to get back to that state championship game. Their last trip there was back in 2016 when they played our Forreston Cardinals. And in Class 3A, the Byron Tigers move on with a 32-0 win over Wilmington. That game with the Wildcats was a game that people thought would be closer than it was. Byron stormed out to an 18-0 lead and then kept it going for the 32-0 final. They're going to play Princeton, which is no surprise. Princeton beats Paxton Buckley Load at 38-12, and that's going to set up another showdown in the semifinals. So for the Three Rivers Conference, they have two teams in the semifinals with both Princeton and Sterling Newman. So obviously, and then Byron being there as well, you can see that there's quite a bit of strength here in the northwest corner of the state. They're going to play the winner of Quincy Notre Dame and Williamsville. Williamsville is no surprise as they took care of Vandalia 56-28. And Quincy Notre Dame avenged a loss to Mater Dei earlier this year, 21-19 to get into that semifinal match that a lot of people have Williamsville heavily favored in. So lots of good games there. Obviously, we have quite a bit to break down, too.
Well, and before you go on, I mean, you want to talk about the strength of the area up here. I mean, we had the pleasure of going down to Polo on Friday and taking in the 8-man game against River Ridge.
Yes, and the Polo River Ridge game went in favor of Polo, 62-20. So Polo will be playing in the 8-man state championship on Friday at 7 p.m. at Monmouth College against Milford Cisna Park, who was the state champion last year. And then Blackhawk Warren is going to the state championship. They are playing Thursday at 10 o'clock at Camp Randall Stadium against Edgar. So that's a repeat of last year's state championship game, which Blackhawk won 22-15. So a lot of good football coming up, but we're going to break down our semifinal games right now. Well, we get a matchup that a lot of people were hoping for. Obviously, it could have went either way between Annawan-Wethersfield and Morrison, as I think either way you went, it didn't really matter. Everybody wanted to see one of those two teams against Lena Winslow. So we have that matchup here. I Good thing is it's exactly how the state had it planned out, with the 1 seed Annawan-Wethersfield and the 2 seed in Lena Winslow. So it's really played out in that regard. Obviously, both these teams come in with 12-0 marks. Lena Winslow defeating Ackwen last week 52-20, where Annawan-Wethersfield got past Morrison 20-13. This is Lena Winslow's third consecutive trip to the semifinals, winning state in 2017, losing to Forreston last season, and now they're here again with the opportunity to get back to DeKalb, which ironically, Lena Winslow has been to DeKalb 2 of the 3 times that they have hosted the state championship, winning in 2013 and 2017. Arcola was the only other team that got in there and won in between, which they were the 2015 state champs. This is the 6th trip to the semifinals for Lena Winslow since 2009, so that's 11 seasons and 6th trip to the semifinals. So it shows you the type of success that Lena Winslow has had. Obviously, Annawan-Wethersfield's not afraid of success in history as well, as they've made their 12th consecutive trip to the playoffs since their co-op, which happened 12 seasons ago. And they are making their 3rd trip to the semifinals since 2015, going both in 2015 and 2016, where they lost to eventual state champions Downs Tri-Valley in 2015, and then Deer Creek Mackinac in 2016. This is the first time that both these two teams have matched up, and you know, similar to like what we've seen with Annawan-Wethersfield and Morrison and Annawan-Wethersfield and Forreston, you're going to see a spread offense against a wing T, double wing type offense, and it's going to be speed and finesse versus power and smash mouth. And you know, that's one of those things that a lot of people are like, well, Annawan-Wethersfield's really good, and to be honest, they are. I mean, for the brand of football that they play, they're more physical than what people give them credit for. They fly to the ball. I mean, they did a good job of that when we saw them play against Forreston. They did a great job sealing off the edge on the outside run and then getting their attack in the middle. And it was evidence in their game with Morrison as they held the Mustangs to just 7 yards of rushing offense, which was pretty impressive. Obviously, Lena Winslow's got the big horses in Sean Ormiston, who is now the NUIC rushing touchdown leader. He's sitting at 4,467 yards. So he's only 162 yards away from tying his former teammate and Leewin graduate, now NIU running back Ravion Valentine, as the career rushing leader in the NUIC. And he's right around 67 yards, I think it was, or 66 yards from Ackwen's Brad Janicki. So obviously he's in a lot of good places there when it comes to where he sits. But you can't forget the plays of Mari Roby and Isaiah Bruce. I don't think anybody's forgetting the plays of Isaiah Bruce, but Mari Roby has really set himself up to be that next level playmaker that a lot of people haven't heard a lot about. He's only got 671 yards rushing on the year with 9 touchdowns. But you got to take a look at his pass catching ability, his ability to get behind the defense, and then, of course, QB Luke Benson's ability to get that ball to him on a dime without hesitation.
Well, and speaking of the younger players, let's also not forget Jack Fetterstrom.
Yes.
Sprinkle him in there, too.
Yes, I mean, Jack didn't have a lot of carries here against Ackwen, but he's definitely had some big carries in big moments for Lena Winslow on this run that they're on right now. So with that, we don't want to forget the play of Cade Christman as well. Obviously, he has had some big receptions. And we talk big because, I mean, Lena Winslow doesn't throw the ball a whole lot. I mean, Benson has 871 yards passing on the season. But if you take a look at their completions to their touchdowns, he's got 13 touchdown passes. So that's pretty impressive. And then you combine that with the fact that he's only thrown 2 interceptions on the season. So his completion percentage and the rate of what he's completing the passes at is exceptional, especially with the yardage that they're getting on the big play moments. And they come at times when you're least expecting it out of Lena Winslow. And one of those things that they do well is they set it up by run, 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 run. And, I mean, they're going with traps, they're going with dives, they're going with leads. And then all of a sudden, boom, there goes a fake lead and a pass over top. So, I mean, they suck you in, suck you in, suck you in, suck you in, and then boom, it comes. And that's really one of the pure joys of watching this Lena Winslow football team is the fact that they wear you down in so many different ways that they take advantage of you. Annawan-Wethersfield is going to have their hands full this week. Can they get into a rhythm that will offset what Lena Winslow can do? I think they can to a degree. I think Annawan-Wethersfield will be able to shut that trap down. I mean, you have Drake Van Hyft at linebacker, and he does a great job getting from tackle to tackle for the Titans. You take a look at the play of Brady Kelly as well at linebacker. He can get in on a pass rush. He can get in on the pass defensive side as well. So literally he can move around and fly around. But Van Hyft really stands out big time. I mean, he had a big game against Forreston. He had 22 tackles against Forreston. He had a big game with Morrison this past weekend. So he's really one of those guys that you, if you're Lena Winslow, you need to put a body on him to isolate him away from the play. Obviously, we know that with Colton Quagliano at quarterback, you know, he can definitely drop back, make big plays. He'll scramble when he wants to, but one of the things that's fun about watching him, he's only a junior, but his pocket presence is really fun to watch. I mean, he doesn't scramble unless he absolutely has to. He scans the field very well, especially for being a junior, looking at every target that he has, and he will prolong that play to get it going before he decides to take off. And of course, you gotta put bodies on Julian Samuels and Isaac Shaw. And Shaw really has come into his own here as the secondary receiver. Earlier in the year, it was all Samuels, a little bit of Shaw, but as teams are starting to put more focus on Julian Samuels, Isaac Shaw has really stepped out and has made big plays. I mean, he had 210 yards receiving against Forreston, which was a career best for him. And prior to that, I think his best game was like 103 yards. So it really shows you that they have more than just the one weapon. If you take something away, they have something else available. Now, one of the challenges Annawan-Wethersfield's going to face is that of Lena Winslow's front four defense, of which we saw that when they played Ackland. Ackland had a hard time getting around the pass rush, getting the ball over top. And that's where, you know, Quagliano's obviously taller than Gustafson, so that would help offset that. But, you know, Lena Winslow's going to have to look at what they can do to move the ball here against the Titans. What do you think? You've seen both.
Well, I don't think it's much of a secret. I'm going to take the Panthers. Like we talked about last week, I just think that they have too many weapons, and no one's going to really stop them.
I like Lena too. I agree with you. They're on a mission this year, and that mission is to get to the Calp. Taking a look at the south side of the bracket, we're going to touch base here on Central A+M and Athens as we are getting prepared for what will eventually be the state championship game anyhow, of which we want to make sure we're up to speed and with these teams. So obviously, Central A+M is a heavy favorite in the South. They have been for the majority of the season. Earlier in the year, I had predicted that they would go 7-2, but they had wins over both Tuscola and St. Teresa. They beat Tuscola in Week 3, 49-14, and then in Week 5, they beat St. Teresa 28-26. So obviously with Central A+M and St. Teresa being in the semifinals, that's two teams out of the Central Illinois Conference that are in the semifinals right now. Athens comes in with a 10-2 mark. Obviously, Athens comes out of the Sangamo Conference, where they play with Williamsville and they play with Maroa Forsyth. Obviously, Maroa Forsyth got beat by Auburn, who just took a loss to St. Teresa, but Williamsville's in the 3A semifinals, so there again, the Sangamo has two teams being represented in the state semifinals. Athens lost to Williamsville in week 1, 27-12, and then they lost to Maroa Forsyth in week 7, 21-7, a game in which it was tied at halftime 7-7. Obviously, Central A+M beat Arcola this past week 42-8 to get where they're at now, and Athens beat Carrollton 55-28. That game was actually they're up 55-12. So I'm assuming Carrollton scored the last 2 touchdowns against the reserves. Athens is making their second trip to the semifinals in 3 seasons. They made their first trip as a school in 2017 before they lost to Tuscola 21-14. And Central A+M is making their first trip to the state semifinals since 2001 when they were state runner-up under then coach Mark Ramsey, who is now the head coach and has been the head coach at St. Teresa. And Mark Ramsey just collected his 300th career win with their quarterfinal win here at St. Teresa. So puts them 6th all-time in the IHSA. But if people remember, Central A+M was a team in the 90s that was really tough. They went to 3 straight state championships. They won 1. They lost 2. They lost the first 2, won the last one. So it was 95, 96, and 97. And then they got back there in 2001 and lost as well. But they were a team that a lot of people knew about. They kind of took a fall. But here they are, and they're not taking a fall this year. This is the first team these 2 teams have met as well. So that's one of the interesting things that we have here is in the semifinals we have 4 teams. None of them have met up with each other, and you're getting first-time meetings with them all. Athens has never been to state. Annawan-Wethersfield has never been to state. They were at state when they were Kewanee-Wethersfield before they co-opted with Annawan back in 2001, where they were the 1A state champ. And Central A+M's been to state, but they only have 1 title, and obviously Lena Winslow's been to state, the most recent, with 3 state titles since 2010. Looking at these 2 teams, they have a lot of playmakers. Moweaqua Central A+M is going to come at you with Connor Heaton, Jacob Parody, and Connor Hutchins. They're going to run a spread offense. Mainly again on defense, they're going to run a 4-5 defense, especially against run teams. They're going to stack that box. They're going to leave 2 safeties over top. That's one of the cool things about watching this team is their team speed. They're very fast. They're not very big. They seal off the edge. But they can kind of lack as far as power run up the middle. So a good power run team, such as Athens, may have some success going up the middle of the field. And you take a look at Athens, and you see that they have Nick Laird and they have Dason Davis. Dason Davis is the fullback. Nick Laird's the wingback. And you take a look at what they're going to do, and there's a lot of dives that are going up the middle, but there's a lot of fake dives that are going to end up with off-tackle runs as, you know, Laird will go in motion.
Well, and sorry to interrupt you, but I know between us talking, a really good way to describe the Athens Warriors would be almost like Forrest of past. You know, that Nick Laird, he's just like AJ Christensen. And Dason Davis, he's going to be just like Garrett Bottager, but not in size.
Right, correct. And that's exactly it. And the other thing is, too, is where Forston is always subbing in running backs, Athens is not subbing in a lot of running backs. You also have Dylan Fletcher and Isaiah Cody that will fill in at wingback as well, but that's really the gist of what you have for the running backs for Athens as far as what they're going to do. Obviously, Central A&M is a team that reminds me a lot of Akron. They're going to run a spread offense. They're going to rely on Heaton to get quick passes out. They're going to roll out to their right a lot because Heaton's right-handed, and they're going to look downfield. Parody's going to run in motion. He's almost going to set up like a wing back and run across in motion, and then he's going to dart up the field down the seam or in a slant route across the middle. And really, one of the things that Central A&M is doing, they're quick hitting. I mean, they're not going to sit there and wait for the deep ball. They're going to hit you with the quick plays, the quick bubble routes, the quick screens, the quick slants, and maybe a seam route here and there. Athens is going to power run you. I mean, you take a look at their quarterback, Jack Richards. He's only got about 541 yards passing. And granted, you add in the play of Caleb Childers and Wyatt Boyer at wide receiver. They're not getting a lot of plays at wide receiver, but they will come in and they will make those plays. And that's typically when Athens will set up in a double wing format, but they'll have a split end. So it's not a double wing tight like we're used to seeing when we see Forrest employ. Both teams are very fast.
Yeah, it's so funny. I feel like in years past we've always been like Southern teams, all they do is throw. Obviously, this does not fit that typical conversation.
Well, and that's one of the things with Athens. You know, they're head coached by Ryan Knox, and Ryan Knox comes out of the carriage that has been a part of the Carthage ways with the Unruh way. And, I mean, there's a couple of guys that are on Athens staff that played under Unruh at Carthage. And that's exactly what Coach Jim Unruh did. He was a wing T guy to a T. I mean, I've made many references on Coach Jim Unruh, and how can you not? I mean, he's had so much success in all of his years of coaching.
Are you still salty from the loss?
No, I am not salty from the loss that we had against Carthage. They were a really good team, and likewise, I mean, that 98 team was one of the best teams that you can put them at one of the best 1A teams to ever play football. I mean, they're that good. I mean, you even take a look at their records. I mean, they're up there in yardage as far as being one of the top teams in the state's history.
Let's bring it back.
Bring it back. So, obviously, another playmaker to watch out for Athens is that of Riley Lopian on defense. He's an offensive lineman on the offensive side of the ball, but he is a linebacker. He's putting up all-state type numbers. He has over 120 tackles. I'm assuming with his numbers this past week, he's well over that. But he's a menace on the defense. And then, of course, Jason Davis is also their fullback, but he's also their other linebacker, and he is the second leading tackler on that defense. So you really got to watch him on both sides of the ball. For Central A&M, you know, Parody and Hutchins are their studs on offense outside of Heaton. They're also their studs on defense. Hutchins plays linebacker. Parody plays defensive back. Both those two are tied for the team lead, at least going into last week. They were tied for the team lead in tackles. Another kid to take a look at is that of Jesky Maples. He's on the offensive and defensive lines, and, you know, he weighs about 240 pounds, so he really, if you take a look at their guys with the stats, he's the only one that has that type of size. The rest of their guys are about 215 or below. Their offense is going to run through Connor Heaton. You know, much of what we've seen before. And really what Central A&M reminds me of is 2017 Tuscola minus the line size. You know, you take a look at 2017 Tuscola and you had C.J. Picasso and you had Hunter Woodard, and they're not there. But with Central A&M, you have Heaton, who reminds me a lot of Luke Sluter. You know what I mean? So, I think they bring a lot of team speed, and they're going to have a lot of things that they can do moving forward. I don't know what her problem is. It's okay. I'm assuming she's laughing at something hysterical that I did, and that's all right. Anyway, you know, a couple guys to also look at too are that of Hunter Gregory and Brody Barnes, as those guys also will get in quite a bit on the defensive side of the ball. And then Jarrett Robertson on the offensive line, and he's also the other linebacker as well.
Who are you taking?
Who am I taking? Well, on my bracket I had Athens. I've been talking up Central A+M all year long as well. I really felt that these two teams were the teams that were going to be where they're at right now as we get ready to go to DeKalb. I think I'm going to stick with Athens. The reason being is I'm a true believer in run teams win in November. And I think this is a toss-up type game. I would not be surprised if the Raiders pull it out. I think either way you pick, you are not going to be wrong. I think this is going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a fun game. Honestly, I wish we were down in the Springfield area to pick up this game because that's how much fun I think it will be. But that's who I got. Who do you got?
I am again going to differ with you, and it worked out for me last week against Annawan and Morrison. I'm going to actually take Central A+M, and hopefully, the Raiders pick up a win. And, like you said, you can't be wrong with who you pick, but we all know that somebody's got to win. So.
Somebody's got to win. So that gives you a look at our Class 1A semifinal matchups. Obviously, it's going to be some good games here. They've kind of went the way that they should have. Really excited to see what Annawan-Wethersfield and Lena Winslow can do. Obviously, a lot of people around the state have Lena Winslow as the heavy favorite. Lena Winslow's just got to make sure that they keep doing what they do as far as coming ready to play. Because if they don't, Annawan-Wethersfield's that team that can definitely knock them off because they're going to come and they're going to hit you. They make big plays at the right times. Central A+M and Athens, that's going to be a fun one. Really looking forward to staying up to speed with that game and how that goes. Lena Winslow and Annawan-Wethersfield are going to be played at Wethersfield High School in Kewanee, Illinois. Kickoff at 1 p.m. Central A+M will be playing at Athens. That will be kicked off at 2 p.m. We'll have that on our scoreboard as well. And then don't forget the Blackhawk Warren game on Thursday at 10 a.m. at Camp Randall Stadium for the state title for Division 7. And then Friday at 7 p.m. the Polo Marcos are going to play Milford Cisna Park for the 8-man state championship. That game will be aired on 94.3. Blackhawk Warren will be on South78Radio.com. And then Lena Winslow and Annawan-Wethersfield will be picked up by Big Radio. I'm assuming it will be on 102.1, but we'll get that information out to you as well. In closing, a lot of good games left to be had. We're getting down to what's left. Really, you got the Final Four. So you're down to the final 32 teams of 256 across the state as we get prepared to head to DeKalb for the state championships. And can't wait, to be honest. It's been a long time coming.
365 days, but that's okay.
Yes.
Well, actually double that because that was Champaign.
Correct.
Going back to DeKalb.
Yes. So, anyway, get out to the game this weekend. Get down to Kewanee. Support the Lena Winslow Panthers.
The Polo Marcos.
And the Polo Marcos and Blackhawk Warren. Get out and support the NUIC in general. A lot of good football here this week in the NUIC. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we'll try to keep up to speed with the Blackhawk Warren game. Obviously, it'll be hard because it's 10 o'clock in the morning. But the Polo game, 7 o'clock at night, we'll be able to have that one on the radio and be able to keep up with the highlights on that one as well. Anyhow, as always, root for the NUIC.